Hi, this is Will, and I guess this is the second part of our little basic elevator project. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in a vision system so we can identify the different types of material that's on the conveyor, and then we're going to sort it so that regular boxes go on the level 0 and go straight through. The blue lids and bases will go on layer or level 1, and the green ones will go on layer level 2. So the first thing we can do, and normally when you start up Factory I/O, you see this pallet show up, and the pallet shows up because you're not in the run mode. Normally when we're working with these things, we're in the run mode and the pallet disappears. But the pallet, and it's also called the edit mode, is where you can add components to your system if you wanted to. And you can start from scratch. You can start from a blank screen and start creating your own conveyor system. But for instance, if you wanted this part to be longer, you could switch it out with a 6-meter conveyor. And these are kind of sorted by, these are the parts that the material that travels on the conveyor. Then you have the conveyor sections and the different things, turns and corners, and this one's a belt conveyor versus roller conveyors. But what we want is these sensors. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a bracket that we can mount things on. And this thing is a little unwieldy to work with. And what we want to do is we want to put it right at the exit of our emitter. So what we kind of want to do is we kind of want to get centered on top of the conveyor. Now I think it's centered. And then in a separate, and let's see, and you can only move it in that XY grid that was shown. To move it in the Z direction, you got to right click on it and hit the vertical movement, and then I think we've got it in place there. So that's the bracket, and now we're going to put our visual sensor right on this edge. So we're going to look at the color right as the pallet exits the emitter box, which is the dashed line. And so, when you're looking at the sensors, you can hover over the sensor, but the what type of sensor it is appears in the lower left-hand corner of this. So you can see I'm hovering over an inductive sensor. Now I'm hovering over a retroreflective sensor. And then here is the vision sensor. So we're going to grab him, and we're going to try to put him on to our bracket. And easier said than done. So let's try to move him a little bit over here. And well, it's not centered, that's for sure. Okay, that might be centered, and it's a little out of position with regards to the bracket, so let's try to get it closer to the bracket position, and then we'll try to bring it up to the bracket level. Okay, just not quite in the center. So let's try to get this from behind, maybe. Okay, and now we'll try to bring it up, because I think we're in the right position. We just need to bring it up. So we right click again, we say vertical transition, and we put it there. Now there it's in the right position. And if we look at this, you can see how it sends out a cone. And so we should be able to read what type of material is anywhere in the cone, but we're going to try to do it so we read it when it's centered in the middle. Now the other thing is, right now the mounting bracket is over here, so it's not on the right side. It's got to be over here if we want to properly put it on there. So again, if you right click on here, it's got yaw, roll, and pitch. Now yaw is what will turn it into the right position, and these plus move it in 90-degree increments. You can also try to do fine rotation, and then it moves it in a smaller granular movement. But right here we're going to move it once, and then we have to move it again. And now we should have this mounted right on the bracket, and so that's what we want. Now what we're also going to do is we're going to count the number of each type of materials. So we're going to put in here, in the PLC logic, we're going to have a counter circuit for each type of boxes, but we also want to put digital display up here. So we're going to try to get one of these for so we got to get it to the box level, and we're one off. Okay, so that's at the box level, but we need to keep adjusting so it's on top of the box. And there it's right at the box level, but it's right, it's too tall, so we want to again vertical transition it, and we'll move it down below this little latch that kind of opens it. And I think we need to move it over just one. Okay, so now we're on the box, and we're at the right level. Now we need one for each of the types of materials, so we have blue, green, and then regular boxes. For these, whether you have lights or switches, whatever you want for these, you know, for the edit materials that we might be putting in, what you can do is you can right click it and then say I want a duplicate, and hopefully we can just duplicate it by moving it one over. And let's see, that's at the box level again, and we're going to do it again and duplicate it, and we'll put it right there. So now we've got all three of these on there. Now one of the things that we can do right now is I'm going to, instead of saying this is the vision sensor, I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to just say this is the pallet type, and maybe it should be pallet material type, but that's okay. Then I'm going to take each of these displays that we just put on there, and I'm going to try to rename these. So the first display, I'm going to change that to box count. Now you can also see it's got this weird slider over here, over here, and the reason for that is if we go in here, and you know, here's the things that we can rotate, we can move it, but the last thing is configuration. Now this says it's like an analog voltage from 0 to 10 volts. What we want is we want an integer. We want to count the number of boxes. So we have to make that an integer. And likewise, what we're going to do for this one, for display 1, we're going to say this is the blue lid count. And we're going to go in there and change the configuration to integer. And finally, we're going to have this one, which will make the green lid count. and we'll make that an integer too. And to make it an integer, you actually have to click on the display itself, and that's where you can give it the configuration. And integer. So we're all set up with these devices. Now we're going to have to latch in our signal. So what I want to do now is I am going to put it in run mode. I'm going to turn on all the sensors, so dock all tags, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a pallet. So I want to go to my emitter, I want to force it on. So my emitter, I'll force it on, and this is good because it's one of our colored lids. Now I'm going to make sure I'm in half speed because I want to slowly move it, and I want to stop it so kind of the center of this lid is directly underneath this sensor, and that way I can position the signal that I'm going to use to actually latch in what the color code, because right now if we turned on the color it would be 0 because it's not in the beam. As it moves inside the beam it'll turn to the color, and then as it moves outside the beam it'll turn to 0 again. And if we look at we have a data sheet. This is the sensor data sheet from, and this is the Factory I/O tutorial, and it's really good. You can find out anything you want about any sensor, any tags, the scenes. This is also where you can go in, and if you go into the main manual, they can also, this is the area where you can search through, and it'll give you tutorials on the Siemens, and it'll give you Allen Bradley, it'll give you Modbus, and it'll just be tutorials on there. But when we talk about using PLC Sim, and we have that special block that allows us to communicate between Factory I/O and Siemens PLC Sim, this is where you get that block. So, but right now we're kind of in the overview, and it just tells you how it can recognize raw materials, lids, and bases, and their colors. And what we're going to be looking for is we're going to be looking for lids and bases for blue, which will be either, and we're looking for numerical, and that's one thing we should just be sure of, that we have it set up for numerical. So blue will be 2 and 3, green will be 5 and 6, and the boxes, which is considered no color, will be just a single value of 0. So if we go back and we look at our sensor, and we have to be, well, first let's move this into position. So I can release the emitter, and now I want to turn on the entry conveyor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it when the center of this, I don't even know if it's a base or a lid, it's one or the other, but when it's directly under the beam. So we'll force on the entry conveyor, and we'll stop it. That's a little late, but that'll work. So now, well, actually now, as I'm looking at it, you can see that the at entry signal has been triggered, but it hasn't triggered yet the entry left signal sensor, and these are both retroreflective. So if you look at this, we're a little past the center of the beam, but we're also a little past triggering off the at entry signal. So rather than put in a new retroreflective sensor just to strobe when we're going to lock in the color, we can use this, and let me try to zoom in here. So this at entry signal, which is actually this first of 2 sensors. This is at entry right here. This is at entry left, which is the second one. So we've triggered this one, and we're going to look for the negative pulse of the add entry signal, and that's going to strobe in our color. So, and I guess I can reset this. I can go into the edit mode, and the thing I wanted to do is to make sure that this sensor was in the all numeric. So I'm going to again right click it, go to configuration, and I want to make it all numerical. Okay, and so I think we're all set up, and now we can go into our PLC code, which I actually am going to drag from my one computer screen over to this one, hopefully. Okay, so this is what we have here, and while I'm at this part, so we want the negative trigger for the at entry. So the negative trigger for at entry is called our entry pulse. So that's what we're going to use for monitoring, or for latching in the color code. And at the very end here, what we had is we had a counter, and then we went through a modulo 3 to get what level we're on. So we can delete these guys, and we can delete him too. And what we're going to do for setting up the color, first off, the boxes are just simply, and we're going to use compare circuits. So what we need for this is we can go into the comparator operators, and we want equals for all of these guys. So we're going to drag this over to here. So we have when the pallet type, which is what the input is, and when that equals 0, and when we have our entry pulse, so this is what's going to be the signal that strobes it in. So entry pulse. So that's going to latch in our coil, which is going to be boxes. And then for our sealing circuit, we've got to put in a parallel branch. And we're going to take our boxes signal. We're going to Control C. Well, first, I guess I need over here. And now I can Control V for boxes. And now what we're going to do to unlatch the signal is, if you saw the last video, at the very end, the very last thing that we do is, after the remover signal, is we have the next box signal. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use that to unlatch the circuit. So this will be next box. And this is our seal-in circuit. And that's all we need for this one. Now for blue, we're going to have 2 comparators, and also for green, we're going to have 2 and 3 for blue and 5 and 6 for green. But now the other key thing that we need coming off here is we have to put in a move instruction. Because remember, this is where we're going to be obtaining our mode. So right here, because the boxes are going on that ground level, and we call that level 0, but we also, when we're going through the code, is we call that the mode. So that is what we need for our boxes. Now I'm going to just to make this a little shorter video, I'm going to just pause it here and put in for blue and green. Okay, so now I've got all 3 circuits in here, and when we do this, we have the pallet type, the entry pulse latches in, boxes here, when the sensor turns up 0. And then and we also put in mode 0. For the blue lids, we have if the sensor registers either 2 or 3, and then it is mode 1. And for the green, it's either 5 or 6. And why is that red? Let's see. This needs to be a dent. So, some reason it was variant, which I'm not sure what variant means, but we'll put it into dent. And now it looks like we're okay, but this one, green, oh, okay, so put in green lids, we really need pallet type. Maybe that was why it's confused. And so on all these, they're the same. It gets latched in with the entry pulse, and then it gets unlatched with the next box. And here we have to make sure that we put in the proper mode. Now we're also going to put in, and when you want to add circuits to here, you can highlight the rail and then click on this, and it'll put in a new branch that we can start with. And we're going to put in counters for each of these. So what we're going to do, let's try to get to the counter thing, is we're going to put in, and I think what we need here is, so when we're going to count is the last thing before the remover, the last sensor in that chain is the at exit. So we're going to take the at exit, and this is the actual signal or sensor. It's not a pulse. It could be, but we're going to say that at exit, and then for the first one it's going to be boxes, because that's what we're counting. And we'll go into a counter circuit, and we just want to use a standard count up. And I'm not quite sure why it does that, but for this, we're going to put in the reset push button, which it shows up as input, and it is an input, but it looks like it's input 3.1, and we can get that from our factory I/O. If we go into the file drivers, we'll find that the reset push button is input 3.1. So that's where we get that information. And again, when we're putting in a lot of these inputs, a lot of them are going to be global memory, and in general we don't care what global memory is used. We only care about the inputs and outputs, because those have to be exactly in agreement with factory I/O. The global memory that we use, which are all the M's, the Siemens TIA, it just picks the next available one, and that's, for the most part, for the global memory, that's fine. And for the preset value, we can, just put it at an incredibly high, value. And then we can take, this is the counter value here, and we can give this a name of count up, or count boxes. Or what we should really call it is box count. And now, a lot of times we copy and paste, but for things like counters and timers, you can't do that. And let me show you why. If we took this whole circuit and just copied it and pasted it down here. What happens is these are all associated with a database, and so this one's database 4. Because we just copied it, this one's also database 4. They can't both have the same database, so this isn't going to work. So what we have to do, and I'll just delete this guy, we can copy these two, and maybe what I'll do for this is I'll copy these two and put them down here for our third chain. But we need to pull in a new counter value. And what it's going to do is it's going to make this one 5. So the one before it was 4. Now this one's 5. And so they have different databases, so this will work. So we'll make this the reset again. This will be our value, if I can get to it. We'll make that 9999, and this will be our blue lid count. And we'll bring in another counter, and we're okay with that because now it's database 6. This will be the reset again. This will be 9999, and we'll make this one our green lid count. Okay, so I think we're okay with this now. Now we want to go back and make sure that we've got this. So I had been doing some playing around before, and I had determined that the box count was QD 30, 34, and 38, and that the actual pallet was on ID 30, which means ID 30 means it's input, it's a DINT, and it's address 30. So if we go into the factory I/O and we're going back into the drivers, so ID 30 is down here. And that's a vision sensor value, but I don't know why that keeps saying vision sensor value when, because it says it here. So we do need to make this pallet type. And now I'm not sure that they actually have to agree between, so long as you have the right addresses, you're okay, but it's, obviously good practice to have the same name. So let's go back to the drivers, and now what we have over here, and we've also got the wrong names over here, so we're going to have to change these again, and I'm not quite sure why this is. So digital display 0 is what we said was box count. Display 1 will be blue lid count. And then green lid count. And can't spell. Okay, green lid count. And when you make changes to this, if we kind of zoom in really close, you can see that it's box count, blue lid count, and green lid count. So we need to go back to our drivers. and we just need to drag these into place. Now, one of the things I had to do because there were no double integers on the output originally, is you have to go into your driver and then go into configuration, and you need to add, I had to add 1 to the inputs for a double word input, and then I had to add 3 here, and you can just change these to what you need if you want to add additional ones in there. But we definitely had to add these double into the original pallet configurations. So now we said that the box count was going to be on 30. The blue lid was on 34, and green is going to be on 38. So now I think we're ready to go. So again, I wanted to show this in case people didn't see it, but to start up with the PLC Sim, what you have to go is go to the online on the top tab line here, and then go to Simulation Start. And this is going to take a while. This says starting simulation is going to disable other interfaces. That's fine, that's what we want. And it does take a little longer with the software simulation as opposed to the actual hardware, but what's going to pop up is a little, well, we'll see it in a second here. It's this little icon that is an icon of what the display panel on the PLC actually looks like. It does have these little LEDs here, and right now you can see it put in what we have as the default IP address, and this is the IP address that we would have on a PLC. So we can, it's set up for, even though it says it finds this PLC here, we still need to do a search and to make it official, I guess. But it's going to find the PLC, and then we can load the code into the PLC. And you can also notice that this run stop, it's amber. Amber means it's in the stop mode right now. So it found it. Now this is kind of the official, we found the PLC, which it's really the simulation of a PLC. But we can load into it, and it kind of follows the same it follows the same steps that you would take if you were loading a regular PLC. So we're going to load it, and now I think so it's downloading to the simulation. Now here it's got a little warning. It says start modules after downloading to device. Now it says no action, but what we really want to do is we want to tab on this, do the pull down menu, and we say we want to start the module. And it's going to finish loading, and you can see this light blinking, and now it's green, which means we are in the run mode. But now we still need a couple steps over here for the code. Is we have to go to the PLC and go online, and the final step after we see all the green, which means we're good, and the check marks means we're really good, and now we'll turn on the monitoring so we can actually look at what's on and what's off in our code. So the PLC should be all ready to go. I'm going to try to move it out of the way and move it over to my other screen. So what we have to do, and I can leave this guy kind of hanging around somewhere over here, is we're not connected. So we have it in the PLC Sim. I think we've got everything hooked up right. So I'm going to just hit connect here, and it's going to take a while to ho-hum things and make sure everything's okay. When it is, this little red thing should turn to a green check mark and then we should be ready to try it out. And hopefully we've got the code right, and then we'll start taking a look at it. So here, this means we're all connected. We can go over here. Now, one thing, and let me go back to the drivers. When we start up the code, anytime we start up the code, all these actuators should be off. The only thing that should be on should be the stop light, because right now we're in the stop mode. And now what we have to do to get going, and I don't like this new version that highlights everything like that, but we have to put in the run mode. We have to take it off pause. You can see that, and I think I'm going to turn off some of these so we can just see what's going on. And I'll put this guy in the corner. So, you know, if I did have to make a change right now, before I started it up again, I would put it in the stop mode and then put it in the run mode. And that would take me back to the original condition that only the stoplight is on. And here you can see the stoplight is on. So let's, well, let's start it up and see what happens. And we want to be, so this should be going up to the third level. You can see that it latched in a 6. And we're at half speed. I need to put it on full speed. And again, because we're at half speed, it's going to crawl up here. But the next one that goes up will be a lot faster. And again, what happens is as soon as it gets on the conveyor, the one elevator goes down, the other elevator goes up to try to catch it. Now, it's not quite fast enough. If you want to, as they say, if you want to try this at home, maybe you can have them both go up at the same time, or, you know, try to get the timing a little better on the pulse that makes it go up. Okay, so that was one green. Here's the second green. Now this one will go up a lot faster because it's in full speed mode. So instead of it, you know, starting to go slow right about here, it'll go slow right here. And that's kind of what you want to have. And again, you have to use the slow signal, otherwise you're going to overshoot this conveyor level. And there's no getting around that. So now let's go back down and take a look at what our counter is, because we should have, after it goes by, it should be 2 green ones, but we're not seeing any pulse count. So let's try to find out. Oh, okay. So, and I'm just looking at the code, and I'm going to stop it here for a second and show you what I did, which is really a dumb mistake, but when this disappears, I'm going to pause it. I'm going to drag my code back over from the other screen. Okay, so what I did is, you know, I copied and pasted, and I was telling you not to copy and paste because the counter will have the wrong data box. Well, this also is boxes, and this will need to be, and I'm going to go offline while I change it. But this needs to be blue lids, and this one needs to be green lids. And that's why, because we hadn't had any boxes, if we did have a box, all 3 of these counters would have registered that box. So again, at this point, because I've already got the simulator working, what I can do is just download to the device, because it knows the device is the PLC simulator. So I can load it. And now it's loaded. I can go online. I can turn the monitoring on off. And now I'm going to get him out of the way. Come on. And now just to show you, I think, what I was talking about before, if I go into the file drivers, you can see that we've got a couple things on, but we don't have the stoplight on. So we're not in the right condition to start it up again. So what we can do is we can go to this little screen here, stop it, wait a second or two, go back to run, and now everything is off except for that stoplight. This is the condition that you need to be in. And that is, and if you looked at the last video, that is based on the startup block that we put in there that just resets everything except for the stop light. And it also puts the mode into mode 0 to start off with. So we can reset this, unpause it. Well, actually something's running again, so I'm going to stop it and then go back into run. And if it's silent, then you know that no conveyor is running. And there was some conveyor that was running right there, so that's why I did the stop run again. So now we should be getting actual box counts, correct counts on the correct displays. So this one's straight through, so that's going to register at our box count here. And again, what we're doing is we're registering the count when we send out the next box pulse. So you can see this is the next box. Take a look at this blue guy. And I guess we'll let about, I don't know, 3 or 4 boxes run. I mean, I know from before everything was correct except for the count. So right now we're at 1 blue and 1 box. And you know, you can create any type of, you know, you don't have to start with any set, you know, you can start with this being a blank screen and create whatever type of conveyor system you want. And, you know, of course you'll have to be really good at it, and I know the factory only gives a 30-day free trial, but, you know, maybe you'll consider buying it. If you want to really learn PLCs, this is the best tool that you know, I've seen for learning PLCs. So hopefully soon we'll get a green guy, and then we can make sure that we've registered blue, green, and boxes. And so this will go up to level 1. And again, the system is right now as it's designed, and you can again change it, but we have it so the package goes up to the right level, and as soon as the pallet is fully on this conveyor, the conveyor at the level, is when the left conveyor goes down and the right conveyor starts up. So again, that's what we have. And also, you know, you can look at what type of package we have and look at this pallet type. And when it's underneath the sensor, you should see, so it registered a 2. And the 2 is blue. And hopefully soon we will see a green package. And, you know, when it does this, if you looked at the emitter, you know, there's a configuration. It's just arbitrary, you know, how many boxes you get, how many blues you get, how many greens you get. So it's apparently in its blue mode. but I think we've seen the green one go up, but we can take a look at these counts. And so right now we've seen 4, if this one disappears, it'll be 4 blues and 4 boxes. And no greens. So go green. There we go. And now this one's going up to the top level. And so this is just how you can modify what you have if you want to modify it, or if you want to create a whole new brand new scene. You know, you can do a lot of different sorting on how you pick items, and so we can just look at this. If I don't know if I guess I have to be, well, we'll let this one go, and I want to show one last thing with this. So now we're at 4, 4, and 1. And so I'm going to stop it, and that'll be so much for the demonstration of this. But the last thing I want to show is we can put this in the edit mode. Now, in the edit mode, if I right-click on the emitter, now here is where it says what type of parts you want. So this says the base, and it's going to be a pallet. So the base is going to be a pallet. The parts are going to be, I can have a box of any size, and then I can have, stop it, over here I can have the blue base, the green base, the blue lid, and the green lid. So if you're trying to replicate this, you should, you know, make sure that it's similar. You know, if this middle product base was also clicked on, or these raw materials, you'd have to add another comparison, because those are going to have, as we look at our table over here, the raw material has a different code than the lid or the base. So right now we have 2 and 3, but if you also had the blue raw material, you'd have to add a comparator of 1. So that's how you can do that. And you can see here that the parts, when the emitter's on, so you could also turn on them, which is probably not a good idea, but if you had the emitter constantly on, which is how the default condition is, it would be putting out parts between 1 second and 2 seconds. And that would be a very hard task for you know, what you wanted to do, because there's not enough time. Well, you could stop it right here, and the way it works is if you keep dropping emitter parts, so while you're bringing one up, you can have it stop right here waiting for the elevator to go up and then come back down, and then you could load it. That makes it a little more complicated.